following him right down, headed straight towards this bog. And right when we get down to it, he immediately takes a hard right. And I'm like, okay, like he's not headed in. And so I see a bunch of thick stuff. I'm like, well, let me walk around this. I don't want to, like, it's so quiet. And I'm like, I don't want to break branches and stuff. And I step around, and as I'm stepping around, all of a sudden you hear a branch break.
Fix your hair, Jesus Christ.
It's all up on the
We
top.
can't have that.
How about now, Dad?
I think you're good now. At least you're presentable. You happy
It
with
was
it?
a rough night.
Was it?
You know, he came in one morning and he said, "You're looking a little rough this morning. Were you at Dell's last night?" That's what you said to me.
You were at Dylan's.
Yeah, but I didn't look rough, I don't think.
All right, we're rolling. We're rolling. We're live. Welcome back to another episode of Northwoods Whitetails Podcast. I'm your host, Joey Davis. Today, I am joined by Dustin Martin,
Hello,
fellow team member, and then we've got Brooke Naylor and my beautiful bride, Jamie. How we all doing?
Thank you. Good.
Good?
yeah.
Fantastic.
So, D. Martin, I want to start with you. What's going on? How's the season been? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Maine.
Yeah, it's actually been a pretty awesome season. It started out with the bear, of course. Yeah. So, I mean, it was pretty unreal experience with that whole bear archery kill. I mean, just the size of that.
For those that don't know, how big was that?
Yeah, that bear ended up weighing 375 pounds and was the 5th biggest archery bear kill in the state of Vermont.
Wow.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
And what's going to take place from here? Is Curtis going to...
Yeah, so
score
Curtis is waiting for the drying period to end, and he's going to score it. He thinks it's going to go Pope and Young.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, so just waiting for that drying period to end.
Nice.
So,
Congrats. That's
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, the thing was a son of a gun to drag out.
Yeah, sure was.
Yeah.
Sure was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had fun watching you guys drag
Yeah,
it.
appreciate it, Brooke.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got some good shots.
Deer season. Let's
Deer
dive
season.
into it.
Yeah.
You killed one in Maine. You
Yeah.
killed a really good buck in Maine right off the bat.
Yeah, right off. I mean, I was actually sitting in my stand back home, and it was a Saturday. Went on to my phone and not really thinking that there was going to be snow, and then all of a sudden I was like, holy smokes, there's going to be snow in Maine. And I immediately texted my dad, and I was like, hey, let's go. He goes, yep, I got an appointment, but you should head up there, and I'll meet you up there. So I literally got home, packed my stuff, and I headed. Went right up to camp. Sunday, got into camp, prepared it and everything, and it said there was going to snow overnight, so I was expecting to wake up with snow on the ground. Woke up and there was nothing, and I was like, "Oh man, are you kidding? Like what's going on?" And then all of a sudden, it just started dumping, and it snowed all day. I by the time I left camp, the ground was covered. Went out, was able to hunt all day, and I ended up hunting till noon and got soaked. But able to walk out to a camera and at least check one. I was like, I might as well go out there, see if I can catch a track. And I figured nothing was really moving at that time anyway. So
Yeah.
went out. Actually had a big 10-pointer on the camera, which is cool to see. I had it right on a signpost.
No kidding.
Yep. And then walked back to the truck. I'm like, I'm soaked. I'm going to go back, dry my stuff out, drive around, see if I can find a track, go to another area where I had been into last year. So went back in there, and I parked the truck, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to line out for the afternoon, see if I can catch something, see if anything's moving. And I literally just walked 20 yards from the truck, and all of a sudden I hit a track. I'm like, all right. Well,
So you hit it same day it was snowing.
Same
you hit
day.
Hit that track.
Well, I hit a track.
Yep.
And I ended up following him. Like, well, it's a track. Deer will lead you to deer. So I was like, well, let me just follow it, see where this goes. So, and I didn't follow him long, and I ended up jumping him. And I think it was a small buck. I mean, it was acting like a buck, and I don't know, but tracked him, and I heard him take off, and where he was bedded, it was no way I was going to be able to see him. Went over there, checked it out. I'm like, yeah, it looks like a small buck or something. I don't know. So I'm like, well, I'll just keep on following him, see where he leads me. And then all of a sudden, he led me right into other deer. I got into another track. It took me around, and then that track led me to a big buck track. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to take this one then. So I ended up taking that one for the rest of the afternoon. And sure enough, all of a sudden I realized he does a 90. And so I start slowing way down and came around this corner, and there was this blowdown. And I was walking around, and as I come around the blowdown, I see a deer take off, and I pulled up, and I couldn't get a shot, but I'm pretty sure it was a decent buck, had good track. And I was like, oh man, like trying to figure out what I did wrong. So long story short, I went back and watched the GoPro footage that night. You could see that buck on the GoPro because I wear my GoPro on my head. But I couldn't pick it out from my eyes because like where my eye level on the GoPro, you could see his head on the GoPro, but because of where I was, I couldn't pick him out, or at least I wasn't able to pick him out fast enough. So it's just one of those scenarios. But that was cool. That was fun. It was a fun little afternoon. Wasn't expecting much for how hard it was snowing, but yeah, by the time that afternoon hit, we had 5 inches of snow on the ground. So
wow,
yeah, it snowed. I mean, heavy all day. And so that was a fun day. Went back to camp, and my dad ended up showing up that night. And then I was like, hey, there's a big buck in this area. Let's go right back there in the morning. So let's drive the roads. There's a bunch of different roads. So that was our plan. We woke up and drove down these different fingers into that area. And first couple roads, didn't see anything, saw some doe tracks. And then the road that I had got on that track the day before, I got onto this immediately a buck track. I'm like, yeah, that's a good track. Older, let's go up the road, see if we can freshen it up. So drove all the way to the end of the road, seeing different tracks, checking them out. And meanwhile, this buck was walking up the road, kind of zigzagging back and forth, and never caught anything that was fresher or bigger. And so then I was like, all right, well, let's go back and we'll take this one. And so my dad dropped me off, and he was going to go to the next road. And I'm like, go down there and see if you can catch a track, or if this track comes out, I don't know, and hang out right there. So that's what he did and left me. I got on the track, and all of a sudden immediately got into a barnyard of deer. And I'm like, holy smokes, like this buck's definitely coming down, checking, smelling, putting down scrapes everywhere. And I was like, well, let me just do a big loop around this cut, see if he comes out or whatever. So I go out, do a big loop around. I see where another small buck comes in. He puts down a scrape, and other does coming in and out. And I'm like, man, I never caught his track. Where did he go? And do a whole loop around. And so meanwhile, my dad's like, I got nothing down on this road. I'm like, well, come back here. That buck must have turned around and went back around, or I don't know where he is. So he's like, so I told him, come up, there's another finger off of this road, just drive out and see if you can catch a track out that road. And there's plenty of deer right in this area. So that's what he did. He ended up passing me, and I ended up going all the way back to where he dropped me off. And sure enough, his track had gone into the cut, messed around, and came right back out. He must have just missed his track, and he crossed the road.
Did he come out while you were in there?
No.
Okay.
Nope. It was all older, so I was trying to freshen them up.
So they were just going both ways.
They were just everywhere. It was like a barnyard. Yeah. And so finally got out, and I realized, okay, he crossed the road, and he's headed back the other direction. So got back on his track, sorted it all out, and meanwhile, my dad had texted me. He goes, hey, I just got a fresher track up here. Should I take it? I'm like, yeah, go ahead, jump on it. Like, I don't know if it's the same buck, whatever. Like, yeah, go ahead and jump on it. So sure enough, long story short, same buck. And like I ended up crossing it. He's zigzagging, still putting down scrapes, going back and forth. And then all of a sudden he does a beeline straight towards that road he's on. I'm like, oh, no way. So I'm like, that's probably the same buck that he's on.
Yep.
Come out onto the road, see his truck. I'm like, yeah, go ahead and take it. That's fine. Take it. I'm going to take the truck and drive to the end of the road and just line out and see if I can catch a different track or whatever. So he takes it. I go out to the end of the road and my plan was just to walk out until I catch a track. And sure enough, it didn't take long. I get into some doe tracks, and I'm like, "Damn, these does are fresh." I'm following them a little bit, and I'm like, "Man, this doe actually looks like it's in heat." And I'm like, and I'm following her, and then I see this buck track come right through. I'm like, "No way." I'm like, it's fresher. I'm like, "Well, I'm gonna follow this track." Jump on it. Meanwhile, my dad's like, "Hey, I'm pretty sure that buck is headed your direction now." All of a sudden, yeah, sure enough, it ended up being the same buck. We're just leapfrogging each other, not even trying.
Yeah.
And
so at that point, how far apart were you and your dad?
Well, I mean, this was probably like 3/4 of a mile. My plan was just to walk away from him, and that buck was just coming right over and checking everything out. He must have smelt those doe and beelined it right towards them. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to take it. And he goes, yep, okay, I'm going to drive around to a different road. So that's what he did, and I ended up taking it. Meanwhile, like I'm following, I'm like, yeah, this is a lot fresher from when we first started. Because I mean, not knowing that we're leapfrogging, but we're leapfrogging, we're really gaining time here. And meanwhile, he's like, I see him feeding, I can see his horns in the snow and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it looks like.
Is he still with the doe at this point?
No.
He'd left him.
He just left him.
She wasn't ready. He hit the road.
Yeah. And so I think that's what he was just doing a loop, putting down scrapes, checking everything out.
Checking on the honeys, hitting the road, going back to bed.
Yeah, exactly. So those doe ended up jumping. They went off in their own way. But I really didn't think that buck was going to be far from him, and he really wasn't. So I think he was kind of staying right in that area.
Yeah.
So got back on his track, go through a couple cuts up and down, and I'm looking at my Onyx. I'm like, man, he's headed right towards this big bog. I'm like, we're gonna get into a mess down there. And so I'm like, here we go. Like, got to stay on him. So following him right down, headed straight towards this bog, and right when we get down to it, he immediately takes a hard right, and I'm like, okay, like he's not headed in, and so I see a bunch of thick stuff. I'm like, well, let me walk around this. I don't want to, like, it's so quiet, and I'm like, I don't want to break branches and stuff. And I step around, and as I'm stepping around, all of a sudden you hear a branch break, and I look up and I just see him take off, and I go, Mer, and I stop him on a dime. And I couldn't believe it. And I run up, and he was stopped looking back on me sharply. So, and pull up, and all I see is just a massive head. I'm like, that is a big deer head. Couldn't pick out any bone. I'm like, just find bone. I'm like, don't just shoot a deer, find bone, find some type of bone, find it. And I'm like leaning around, looking. I can't find anything. Then all of a sudden he turned his head as if he was going to go again. I just see bone. I'm like, yep. And I was able to pull the trigger, and I saw that I hit him. He takes off, and I was like, okay, I got one. All right, I got to run up. And I ran 10 yards or something. And he runs 50 yards or so and stops again, looks back at me. I'm like, okay, I think I hit him good. And he gave me a broadside shot there. So I was able to pull up again and pulled the trigger, and I saw him drop that time.
No kidding.
I was like, all right, I got him right there.
Yeah.
So I ran up and as soon as I saw that body, I'm like, whoo, all right. No idea what he had for headgear, but I was like, that is a big buck.
He had enough. That's
he
all that
had
mattered.
enough. Yeah.
And what'd he weigh?
Yeah. He weighed 220.
Yeah.
Yep. 220.
That's a really good buck. Now, that was the first week of the season?
That
right?
was let's see. Season opened, was it that Saturday? Which is and I shot him on Halloween. Because Sunday you can't hunt, Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, second or third day.
Nice.
Yeah.
How'd it feel to get one off the back?
Oh, oh man. some of the past seasons, it seems like I'm waiting for a while.
Wait until the end of it.
Yeah. But immediately able to use of that snow. We had snow up there early and able to jump right on it. Yeah.
It just gives you so much confidence too. When you shoot a buck right off the bat, it just takes a monkey off your back.
Absolutely.
Not that there is a monkey on your back, but you have a built-up pressure, right?
Yeah.
And there's enough pressure as it is when you're doing this stuff and you're filming and everything else, which you've got phenomenal footage of the hunt.
Yeah. I was pretty psyched to go back and see that it just was able to capture everything.
Yeah.
Literally captured the entire day of it.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you shot, did your old man hear the shots or?
Yeah. So funny enough, he had driven around to the next road. He knew where I was, so he was going to go down and hang out in this area. And as he closes the door, he literally takes like 5 steps and hears a shot. He goes, "Are you kidding me?" Because he knew exactly that it was me. And so he just stands there for a second. And I get on the radio, and we're all psyched and everything. And he tells me later, he goes, "I knew that was you," like right off. I knew that, yeah.
That's awesome.
But no, he was so psyched. And we had just bought this new camp up there.
Yeah.
And so to able to break that in.
Is that the first buck out of the new camp?
Out of the new camp, yep.
Good for you.
Yeah.
So
that was one thing he said. And I'm like, "Man, I can drop you off somewhere." And he goes, No, I'm staying here for all of this experience. So that's what we did. We weighed him in and then went back to camp, was able to hang him at camp
nice.
And
good for you.
Yeah.
That's sweet. So after that, what have we been doing? Where have we been hunting?
Yeah. So, I've been over to the Adirondacks as well. I ended up shooting a doe in the Adirondacks as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. Shot a doe over there. That was earlier, end of October, or whatever, the last day of the first muzzleloader season.
Yeah. It's either or over there or
either
something?
over. Yeah. For the first, for the muzzleloader part.
Yep.
And then had been rifle hunting over there. And then also jumping back and forth to New Hampshire as well. Mm-hmm. And I've been after some big buck, multiple big buck over in New Hampshire. So really just waiting for good snow to get back over there. But I'm definitely going to be focused on there for the rest of the season. That's for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like we're going to get it too. It sounds like it's finally going to start showing up.
Yeah, it's definitely been slowing down a little bit this past week and everything. So trying to work here and there, while I can, and then really hit it once the snow hits. But it looks like Wednesday. 4 to 6, maybe more.
Yep. And then in between working, you've hunted a little bit in Vermont.
Yeah, and I've also hunted in Vermont as well, and I found this area where there's some big buck sign and everything, and that's been fun. So really, I've actually kind of a new area. One area I've hunted a lot, but I've never hunted in this one area, one section on this mountain, and it's been great. So it's been fun exploring that, and ended up passing up a small buck yesterday as well. There was just a dusting of snow, but it was so windy that I was able to cover up your noise walking. So I was able to track him down, jumped him out of his bed. I was all pissed off myself because I blew an opportunity, lost my focus and everything. And I was like going back, checking, wanted to learn from the experience, not just blow out of there and be pissed off. So I wanted to learn it, went back, figured it out. I'm like, I know exactly what I did. I just wasn't focused, and ended up seeing where he went, and he was walking back in the direction that I wanted to go. So, instead of staying on his track, I was like, well, he's going to be looking right back at me. Let me just go up and over this ridge. So that's what I did. I went up and around this ridge, and I came around and looked back in the direction that he went. And sure enough, he was bedded, looking right back on his backtrack, pulled up, and
nice.
Yeah, was able to, got pretty cool footage of that too. So,
but that's good.
He was just laying right down, looking right back, but ended up taking off. But
that's a win.
Yeah, it sure was. It felt good. It felt good.
You don't need to pull the trigger for it to be a win.
Exactly. I felt. Yeah, exactly. I felt accomplished. With that.
That's a good hunt.
So I felt good about that, and then really now it's finally snowing outside, so I'm just excited to.
Yeah, she's snowing all right. Yeah. Here we are.
I know.
Well, you'll be back on again we'll do another season update.
Yeah.
So until the next one.
Yeah.